Hi all, today I bring you another important marine notice from 2019, questions from which are being asked of deck watchkeepers or second mate candidates going for oral examination. Because this marine notice, although it was issued in early 2019, it draws attention to navigational practices that the bridge team, which includes the master and the deck officers in charge of a navigational watch on ships specially operating in Australian waters, and the practices that the deck team or the bridge team should be following when the ship is transiting the Australian waters. So it also provides information about charts and publications that the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, that is AMSA, which is the regulator or the maritime regulator in Australia, which they consider appropriate for safe navigation accordance to Chapter 5 of the SOLAS Convention, or the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. According to this marine notice, responsible navigation practices include the use of a variety of navigational aids to verify the ship's position. So examples of a variety of navigational aids could be GPS, it could be position fixing through terrestrial objects, ranges and bearings, it could be using the sextant. Um, so different means to verify the ship's position. So in that regard, the positional information obtained through the satellite systems, such as the global navigation satellite systems or the GPS, should be verified, should be supplemented with the use of visual bearings or radar bearings and ranges of terrestrially based objects. So do not only rely on positions through GPS, but also verify it through terrestrial objects. You can also use sextant if you are good in the use of sextant. If you can get accurate position fixing through sextant, you are encouraged to use that as well. It also includes, wherever it is possible, of course, to use the parallel indexing techniques which are available in modern day ARPAs or radars or automatic radars to monitor that a ship is adhering to its planned voyage or its planned track. You should also determine the estimated position of the ship, taking into account the leeway and the set and drift of current. You should also use soundings, clearing bearings, transit bearings as cross-check means for position fixing and course alteration points. You must also take into account the zone of confidence, which enables an assessment of the limitation of the hydrographic data from which the chart was compiled and the resulting degree of risk. So this basically tells you to be aware that there could be some errors, there could be some margins that you may have to maintain, and you cannot solely rely on the chart and the information it provides. The chart will provide you with some instructions regarding that as well, so you must follow precautionary measures when relying completely on the information as available to you on the chart. Then it also talks about fixing the ship's position at frequent and regular intervals, even when pilot is on board. So of course, if you are on open sea, you fix the position maybe say hourly, but as you are coasting or you are in pilotage waters, or you are transiting between two land masses, you should be engaging in more frequent position fixing to ensure that your ship is proceeding along the planned route and the planned track, and you can take early action if it is not doing so. Then you have to ensure that the ship has the latest maritime safety information for your voyage area, which is being covered by the Inmarsat safety net enhanced group call receiver correctly. So the enhanced group call feature, or the EGC feature of the GMDSS, allows you to be in touch with one ship or a group of ships in the vicinity that may receive or send messages, and you may receive or send messages from your ship. Then we also talk about being aware of the practicing human factor principle, such as fatigue. So make sure that the watchkeepers on the bridge are not fatigued, they are not tired, they are alert, and they are being able to do their watch. So should the helmsman or the lookout. You should also implement principles of bridge resource management, which is basically communication with within the bridge team and documenting your actions that you are taking on the bridge, also being in charge even when the pilot is on board. And finally, it also talks about cooperation with the vessel traffic services, mainly in reporting the position of your vessel and following their instructions and their recommended route when transiting in the areas monitored by the VTS. The owners and the ship owners and the masters of the vessels are instructed that the new personnel who join the ship should receive a proper familiarization with their duties on the bridge, as well as the use of the ship's navigational equipment. Now, this is as per the ISM code, which is discussed in the Australian Marine Order 58. Now, familiarization of training or familiarization training should also be followed by the familiarization checklist issued by the ISM, which may have been developed by your company based on your ship type. So you should be using ISM checklist. So it is not only important that you carry out a familiarization training, but also you should document it, because documentation of what you do is an essential part of ISM, as well as it is helpful if there is anything that goes wrong and there are any kind of legal investigations by external parties. You may produce these documents to show that all necessary action was followed. And the Australian Marine Order 27 also implements the navigational requirements of Chapter 5 of SOLAS Convention regarding specific carriage of shipboard navigational equipments, nautical charts, nautical publications, to ensure that the ship will proceed on the voyage with up-to-date information, up-to-date charts and publications, which will keep the ship safe throughout the voyage. The Marine Order 27 also specifies that prior to proceeding to sea, the voyage plan should be made and approved by the master. So the master and the bridge team should review it, approve it, making sure that it is taking into account the guidelines and recommendations as provided by the flag state, the IMO, the classification society, to keep the ship safe throughout the voyage. And before proceeding out to sea, the master and the bridge team should review it and approve the voyage plan. The voyage planning and execution should be done as per IMO Resolution A893, Section 21, which basically says that the voyage planning or the components of the voyage planning should be set out in the stages of appraisal, which involves gathering all the information from publications, from previous voyages, from other documents, then planning of the voyage, which should be from berth to berth. Also include the areas which are going to be having the pilot on board. So even when pilot comes on board, it should be part of the passage plan. You should detail out the action as to what the vessel or the bridge team should be doing when the pilot is on board. Then the execution of the voyage plan and the monitoring of the voyage plan, which means that monitoring that the vessel is proceeding as per the plan track, and if not, then immediately that should be corrected. Or if the planned voyage is not safe for the ship, then appropriate changes should be made to ensure ship is safe, and those changes should be documented in the voyage plan and the bridge team briefed before the ship proceeds on to a new plan. The master of the vessel should ensure that the voyage plan takes into account the potential for reasonable unplanned diversions or deviations from the voyage. For example, if you are transiting an area which is prone to the tropical revolving storms or TRS or hurricanes, then you should have a an alternate plan or a contingency plan included in your voyage plan as to how you will seek shelter from the TRS or how you will avoid it, or if the pilot gets delayed in the port, where will you go and anchor the vessel, or where will you drift around. So contingency plan, contingency anchorages, drifting plans, keeping the ship safe throughout the voyage should be planned and included in the voyage plan. Any changes to the voyage plan should be marked, it should be documented, it should be recorded and as well as approved by the master and reviewed by the bridge team. Where electronic charts or ECDIS systems are used, the voyage plan should be validated by the route checking function, which uses applicable safety parameters as well as a visual check of the intended tracks using an appropriate scale for viewing. So remember, the charts that you use even in electronic navigation systems should be appropriately scaled. It should be the right scale. It should not be overscaled where you lose the details, or if you make it too cluttered for the navigation officer to make out the important information necessary for keeping the ship safe. Any kind of unnecessary deviations or alterations of courses should of course be avoided. Once the passage plan has been approved, it should be followed to the T. However, if there are any changes made due to the circumstances, for example, if you have to arrive to the pilot station earlier, or if you have to avoid any tropical storms, hurricanes, or maybe suddenly a military exercise or a firing exercise is taking place about which you didn't know, and you have to alternate or you have to find an alternate route, make sure that route is planned, distances calculated, ETA calculated, everything should be documented and approved by the master before the voyage or the intended voyage changes from its planned route. Any discrepancies that you find in aids to navigation, for example, if you find a light characteristics being different from that published in the Admiralty list of lights, or you find some buoys missing, or even if you find a landmark missing, then you must immediately report it to the maritime regulator, or in this case the Australian Hydrographic Office, or the AMSA, or the Rescue Coordination Center in Australia, or the Coast Radio Station. So this important information should be noted and transmitted to the Australian Hydrographic Office so that they can verify the accuracy of the information or make the changes in the publications. Responsibility for safe navigation with pilot embark of course lies with the bridge team. So masters and the bridge team officers who are in charge of the navigational watch are responsible for the safe navigation of the ship even when the pilot is on board. So the master should ensure that over reliance is not kept with the pilot. Just because pilot is on board, the bridge team should not become relaxed. They should continue doing their duties, for example fixing the ship's position, making sure the vessel is proceeding along the planned track, keeping a good lookout, having a good situational awareness of other ships in the vicinity. The pilot may sometimes communicate with his or her in her own language, then making sure that you are up to date, you know what is the intention of the pilot on board your ship or the intention of the other ships, how the pilot plans to avoid collision with other vessels in the vicinity or communication with tugs. Everything should be aware, or people on the bridge, officers on the bridge and the master should be aware of what is going on at all times. And the master of course has the right to override the pilot, or rather not listen to the pilot if he or she feels that the vessel will not be safe due to the pilot's actions. All right, making sure that the bridge team is proficient in the use of the bridge equipment on board. You should be knowing about the alarms, you should be knowing about the different systems, and it should be checked. The equipment should be checked, it should be operational. If it is not operational, the pilot should be informed, and at all times you should monitor the progress of the vessel, and if you are not happy with it, then within the bridge team it should be communicated to the master, and the master will then have the right to judge whether action should be taken or not. Finally, the notice also provides information about the Australian charts and publications as issued by the Australian Hydrographic Office, and where they are available, and what precautions should be observed when using the ECDIS or the electronic charts or the paper charts. At all times, like I said before, appropriate scales should be used. So whether it's paper charts or electronic charts, you should use the right scale of chart available. So of course, a large scale charts are used for an overview of the passage, but at all times we try to use a small scale chart, because small scale chart provides us with details of essential information which is helpful for keeping our ship safe. When it comes to electronic charts, you have to make sure, like I said before, do not clutter the screen. So if you use an excessive small scale chart, additional or excessive information is available on the screen which may clutter the screen, and you may lose track of the information that you actually want. And if you use a large scale chart, then essential information may get lost, because the screen although will not be cluttered, but you may also lose the essential information. Similar with paper charts, make sure you always use the smallest chart, or rather sorry, the largest scale charts available. I said the opposite before, isn't it? So large scale charts should be used, not small scale charts. So small scale charts are used for an overview of the voyage, but it's the large scale charts that should be used prudently and should be used as much as possible. So you should order those large scale charts when you are planning the passage, and making sure that the appropriate charts are available on the bridge and they are corrected with the latest notices to mariners, and up-to-date information is provided to keep the ship safe. You should also be aware of the zone of confidence. Now, what is zone of confidence, or a category of zone of confidence, which is called cat zog? Basically, the zone of confidence provides you with the information with which mariners can use to assess the limitation of the data or the hydrographic data based on which the chart and the information on the chart was compiled. And then you can also assess what is the resulting degree of a risk that may result. So sometimes it could be a datum issue. It could be that the chart will mention that the information available may not be absolutely accurate, or you may have to apply some error to it. Sometimes the error is in points or decimals of minutes, and it may be very insignificant to you, but it may become very significant if you're passing very close to a landmark or you're passing very close to a wreck. Then the chart will advise you to exercise caution or exercise precaution or apply an error to it. So that is your zone of confidence. It basically provides you with information whether you can trust or how much you can trust, and what is the degree of risk available to the information provided on the chart. So also informations are provided where you can access Australian navigational electronic charts or Australian paper charts. How can you source them? We have the hydrographic office, the Australian hydrographic office, from which you can access the charts. So information about that is also discussed. And finally, what is discussed is the Seafarer's Handbook for Australian Waters, which is the publication AHP 20. Now this is also being published by the Australian Hydrographic Office, and it provides or assists ships to operate safely and to comply with requirements of international conventions such as SOLAS, MARPOL, STCW or ISM in Australian waters. So if you are a ship which is not registered in Australia and you are coming in Australian waters, this handbook is very useful to you, because if you go through this handbook, it will provide you with the guidance and the instructions as to what should be done when the vessel is transiting the Australian waters. And the last bit of the marine notice talks about the port state control inspections which your vessel may be subjected to if you're in Australian waters, because the AMSA port state control inspectors will check for whether your voyage plans are documented and whether you adhere to it. So you may have to reproduce the entire voyage, which includes your GPS positions, your communications with VTS, monitoring of depths through echo sounder, the course recorder, the AIS data. So you may have to produce the VDR data. So you may have to recreate the entire voyage if the port state control comes on board and asks you to do so. They will also check whether you have the latest and up-to-date corrected charts, paper charts, electronic charts and publications available on your board, whether you are using the largest scale charts available, and whether you are carrying the up-to-date nautical publications including the AHP 20, that is the Seafarer's Handbook for Australian Waters, if you are in Australian waters, of course. Alright, so this notice is very important for not only vessels which are registered in Australia, but also vessels which are coming into Australia. So I thought I will discuss this marine notice. This is the latest marine notice. This has been issued in 2019, and I will take up more marine notices as they are issued in the next year, because these questions based on these marine notices are being asked of second mate and third mate candidates, as well as chief mate candidates going in for orals. So make sure you watch the video and you note down the important bits and pieces of the marine notices. You don't have to remember everything, but make your own notes, and so that if the surveyor asks you about this marine notice, you should be able to talk at least a few minutes about it, which will give the surveyor confidence that you know about this marine notice. Thanks for watching, guys, and all the best with your examinations.